Dobrý večer, dámy a pánové. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Please, it's my honor to welcome you, all of you, the full audience, on the very first presentation and debate with Stephen Holl. I don't think that it's necessary to waste the time by further sentences and speaking, so please welcome Mr. Stephen Holl himself. Yeah, that's your place, please. Martin will come, don't worry. Stephen, welcome again. I know you've heard it several times today. What are your feelings? First time in Ostrava.
I'm very excited to be here. I had a wonderful 2 days so far, seeing the city. We had photographs in what I was told was the Smetana Square of Janeček statue, which was fantastic. And we had a tour today, and on this. Can everyone see that slide, or no, not yet?
Don't worry, it will appear in a few seconds. We can please start the presentation on, because Stephen has some surprise for you and for several special people here.
No, I just want to thank, whenever that slide, yes, this is a beautiful.
And please focus on Stephen's pronunciation, because it's amazing.
This is a beautiful, Děkuji to Jan Zemla, who orchestrated this wonderful red line in the snow. Of course, the enthusiasm of Zemla is driving the project, as well as the enthusiasm of Mayor Thomas Matsura and the Deputy Mayor Zuzana Bagorova. And also want to thank Tadeusz Gorichka for the great exhibition. I think it was really well done. And I encourage everyone to go there and see the show. That's 11 recent buildings, and it's not a buildings about the picture of the building, which you see on the internet. It's about the process, the thought process, and the idea of making models and making drawings and thinking about the beginning of a project. And
amazing, yeah. The presentation will follow, but Stephen, I know it was your personal wish not to sit here alone, because you are not the only one who's designing
it's a
the
team.
concert hall.
A big team.
It's a team of people.
Wow, there's
big
many
team,
people. There's
and
engineers,
one of the most important
acoustic engineers. And Martin?
Yeah, Martin will join us.
Come
so
out,
please
Martin, come out.
Welcome another important person, architect Martin Kopač. Well, today in the morning we saw each other at the press conference. There were just several journalists and photographers. I think this is much bigger audience, but I promise nothing bigger will come. It's nice to have you here, and don't waste our time again. And please, the stage is yours. You can start the presentation.
Let's see if this. Yes, I want to just go back in history. My first visit to the Czech Republic was 2004, and Marcela is here. I think, it was a really interesting moment because I met Marcela Steinbrokova, who was a graduate of the Cooper Union. John Hajduk, by the way, is Czech history.
Stephen,
and so
Marcela is over there waving.
And thank you for coming. And we had this surprise dinner, and she showed me the publication of my at that time recent book, Parallax, in Czech, Parallaxa. So she brought a rare copy for Jan Zemla, which I'm going to sign for him afterwards. And at that point, I said, this is my first visit to Prague, and I had worked on the Knut Hamsun Museum in Hamarøy, Norway, and I was obsessed. I read everything of Knut Hamsun. I think he was the first surrealist writer. Hunger dates from 1890, and I always wanted to know, did Kafka read Hamsun? So I need to go to his library and see if Hunger and the books of Hamsun are in the library. And so she took me there, and yes, they were there.
They were there.
Yes. So Kafka was influenced by Knut Hamsun. By the way, my father was full-blooded Norwegian, and one of the reasons why I had that commission is my Norwegian. My grandfather was born in Tønsberg, Norway, so there was a connection between Hamsun and Franz Kafka. I was very excited, and the lady there said, "Oh, by the way, we need to do a renovation of the library." And then I made some sketches, and Marcella and her team executed. That was my first project in the Czech Republic, the Franz Kafka Library. I'm very proud of the fact you can go there and find Knut Hamsun's work. And then this was also a surprise. They did a beautiful job. It's the same paper and the graphic design and everything, and it's in Czech. But now it's out of print. So we have one rare copy for Jan Zemla. My work is always based on theoretical speculation. This is from 1989, my first manifesto, Anchoring, where I argued that every building should be about the site, the climate, the circumstance, the culture. It has a meaning in relationship to those things, not into the stylistic signature of an architect. So in a way, I'm the opposite of Frank Gehry or Richard Meyer. I really believe that buildings need to have their unique meaning in the place, and this is an argument for that. And then in 1993, I wrote maybe a more important book called Questions of Perception, in which I spoke about all the things that are in general. So in a certain sense, the first book was about the specific, but then I said, but there are general things like the nature of color, the nature of light, the nature of the body moving through space. So I wrote this together with Johanny Pallasma and Alberto Perez Gomez, and this was published first in Japan and then republished by William Stout Architecture Books. And I'm happy to say that in Portugal, next year, they're going to have a kind of reunion of Johanny Pallasma, Alberto Perez Gomez, and I around these questions of phenomenology and architecture. And this is my recent book, Compression, which I've done 5 volumes now over the years. And the argument here speaks a little bit in the beginning of this book about neurological breakthroughs in recent technology and how we can actually see now that through synapses of the brain we can understand how the environment affects us. So natural light affects us and how important that is to health. And it's interesting that when I put this book together, I think the last project in the book is the Ostrava Concert Hall. But we had not one. We were in the first phase. This is the first phase model and a first phase drawing.
This is the first round.
The first round.
Yeah, with the 34
So we're still
teams.
4 more schemes and to prevail. But it was like I took a chance. I said, you know what? When we did this before in Anchoring, we put in the Chiasma Museum, but we hadn't won, and then we won. So that was kind of a hope. And that was the first drawing. On my brother's birthday, he's born on the 25th of October, I made that sketch about the perfect acoustic instrument in its case, and I brought it to my wife, Dimitra, who's also an architect, and she said, it's a winning idea. Because the problem, you want the entrance on the esplanade, but you want the concert hall on the garden side, on the park side. And
Stephen, I should also say that at that moment you were really into the project when we found this great idea in the beginning.
Right. Before that, I said maybe we shouldn't enter. It's too much work, And
I was a little bit hesitant, but when
it's always like that. When you have an idea, then you believe in it. I made this sketch. By the way, this is 10/26/18. I made this sketch the day after I made that concept sketch, and I said, this particular approach because it's, in a way, it's an ideal relationship of the old and the new. So it's not Bilbao, which is all new. It's not a kind of renovation or something subservient to the old. It's the new and the old in a new union and a special one. And I thought that is interesting internationally in terms of architecture today. What do we do? What is the future? And also will be ecological. I'll show you that in a little while about the ecological breakthroughs, the kind of almost net zero aspect of ecology. So it could be, and that was some sketches of natural light in the entrance hall very early on, and then I was studying Janacek. When we got into the second round, I read his biography, and I was very interested in his theories, and I feel a kind of kindred spirit because, making things, you need to have a theoretical base. And he had these, and I can't pronounce them, sounding, counting, and summing. You can pronounce them.
Oh, you could pronounce them, I remember.
Zinci, kit, sit, you do it.
Znící, sčítací a scelovač.
Yeah. So I made the sketches about how we would make the acoustic surround in the hall based on these ideas which we have been developing. And that was some ideas about water and the park, a water garden at the park side and maybe a water garden at the entrance side. And how the experience, that's very, very early on. That's before we got into the second phase, about the experience of coming to the hall would be something kind of celebratory. That was the model from the first phase, and the relationship between the old and the new. And now as a section, you see how we basically jump over the building and not really touching it. Maybe we connect to it in several ways. I don't know if you were speaking about that, but several ways. And we're still adjusting to be sure that all these relationships are correct. And there's even a bigger model now. This is the model that's in the exhibition, but there's a larger model. We built a much larger model, and we're going to build an acoustic model. Nagata Acoustics requires a 1:10 acoustic model of the whole hall to check the acoustics, and that's going to be under construction in November.
That's in construction right now.
Oh, it is?
It's already
already in construction. So that will be even more interesting to experience. There you see, that's from the competition drawings, the circulation aspect, the relationship of the site, and some computer drawings showing the natural light coming in. And this is a recent development drawing. Everything has to be changed and revised according to every aspect of design. And those show the fact that we have steel trusses now in the nose piece, and the escalators are the light fixtures with Czech glass. I'll show you a close-up. But this is an accurate drawing of the development as it is now. The entrance will have a wonderful canopy inviting in, and the water feature on the left and the right. And this will be lit in the evening. It will be, and then as you go in, then the yellow in these drawings we're working now. We're just starting to develop that. In fact, Martin has some samples. I would like to do this in Czech glass. The great history of art glass in Czechoslovakia. I had my first. I wanted to have a slide of this, but my first experience was at Pilchuck. The glass artist Dale Chilhooly is a good friend of mine. I grew up in Seattle, and Pilchuck is in Seattle. And when I did a kind of 1 week internship there, blowing glass and casting glass for our chapel of St. Ignatius. And at that time, the husband and wife, Czech artists, and I think it's Lubeček. I can't remember the...
Lubeček.
Right. They had their famous red glass that they were working there at Pilchuck, so I had a chance to meet them. Here again is, we think to use cast glass in textured elements, and that's textured concrete, so the concrete won't be... It'll be like what we've done at the Queen's Community Library with a kind of texture, and when you see it and feel it, that's a solid And we get that with the formwork and a stain. And that's showing the art glass at the edges of the escalators, which will also act. Hervé Descott from Observatoire, who's been doing my lighting for every museum. We've done over 10 museums, and he's a genius lighting designer, and they have a great company, and they did Jean Nouvel's Holl and Frank Gehry's halls. So he's helping us doing all the lighting on this, and we're still in the process of locating exactly and getting the lumens and getting the temperature. That's the bar on the second floor. Bar to. I think it's a very important place in the concert. I always think at Carnegie Hall, every time I go to a concert, you know, you have an intermission, you want to have a little drink or something, and that's really a kind of moment of social interaction for the people, and you also need to know where's the toilet. So I keep saying to Olaf and Martin, I said, after I'm having my glass of wine here, where's the toilet? Where is it? So anyway, we're going very carefully through the whole process of how we use this building and how it's going to be a great experience.
Stephen, on the previous shot, there was a nice relationship between the old and the new building.
Right.
On the rendering, the one before,
right.
where you
so you
see
can see the old building, right? So and we're using the facade of the old building as a light fixture because we have LED. This was Hervé Descott's idea. We have LED on the back of the support columns that are along that line, and then the light is glowing off the glazed tiles of the original building.
It's the exterior facade of the existing building that we are now making an interior feature.
Right. I mean, in the early phases, we had a glass there, and I said, why do we do that? Let's make the original building be part of that moment of that experience. It's also interesting to be there and see the old facade at an elevation you could never see it. Only birds could see it at that elevation.
And also by doing so, you made the bar area much bigger and much more spacious.
Right, it has more area. And then at the top floor, there's also a little bar at the I call it the nose cone. There's a little bar there. So you have these spectacular views. You can get a drink there. You have a spectacular views out on the esplanade, and it's all in natural light. And there's a kind of connecting stair, connecting everything vertically on the back side of the building, which is also being lit by art glass, and there's skylights at the top. We have natural light in the entrance hall, in this stairway, and also in the main hall, but it has a blackout, electronic blackout screen. And there you have a kind of feeling of that top entrance hall and the relation of the perfect acoustic instrument in its case. You can kind of read the wooden element of the main hall is visible there, while everything else is scratch coat plaster, an acoustic plaster, and this is a terrazzo ground concrete, which is super economical. We're thinking very carefully of the economics of this building. I mean, it's a zinc standing seam roof, which is like the zinc roofs that I've seen in historic Ostrava buildings. So it's actually, I think the cost of this building will be quite a bit lower than typical concert halls of this time. There you have the scratch coat plaster. That gives us an acoustic quality, but it reveals the handwork of the plasters. You can see the score marks of the scratch coat in there. And this is going to be as close to a net zero building as possible. Matthias Schuler at Transsolar in Stuttgart, he helped us. We've done over 12 geothermally heated and cooled buildings with Matthias Schuler. They're all working perfectly. And here he's proposing a capillary radiant cooling together with our acoustic absorption and the scratch coat plaster finish. And there's a view. This is an earlier view of the main hall that you can see the acoustic treatment in the wall pieces that are in wood, CNC wood elements. And it's a vineyard plan. I'm very excited about this I think it's really going to be a fantastic space, and I'm excited to know that this will be the only vineyard plan in the area, because the hall that's supposed to be going forward in Brno is a shoebox plan, and as is the one in Katowice. So the vineyard plan, I think, is the state of the art, as does John Nouvel. I mean, his vineyard plans are famous. Maybe the first really great vineyard plan was the Philharmonie in Berlin by Hans Scharoun. That is an incredible experience. I had many years ago, 1989, I had the chance to see Herbert von Karajan performing, conducting in the Berlin Philharmonie. This I think, is going to be an extraordinarily and beautiful space, but Nagata Acoustics is keeping us, really in every way. And we have a concrete shell. They want that mass. And you can see it there, up there in the corner. That is a concrete shell around the whole building because they want the necessary mass. And now we have a treatment around the ground level, which is also an acoustic screening that can be moved. And we have, I don't think they're showing on this slideshow, but we have acoustic curtains that come across that main element so that we can have Laurie Anderson playing her rock music and her electric violin. And she's a friend of mine, and I'm sure she'll say yes if we invite her to play here. and there's the cafe, which looks out on a water garden and the park, and I think it's going to be a great place. Maybe we can have some very special wine and food in that space. Now, this is going to be really important because the water garden is there and the park is there, so how the building opens up, and we've been opening it up as we've developed the design since the competition, we've opened it up even more to really take advantage of that park side, and that's a north face, so we don't have to worry about solar problems with that glass, and we have the VIP lounge at the top, and then the cafe at the bottom there. And this is Martin's part. He's going to do the technical.
Maybe Martin, before you start your speech, you were so into starting that I forgot an important information for all of you. Before the start, you could see the hashtag, which help you to get to the Slido. It's a perfect app for today's evening. You can ask the questions, and after finishing your presentation, we will try to answer as much of them. So please, don't forget about it. I'm sorry not to mention it at the beginning. Yeah, maybe Stephen, you can ask yourself as well, if you want. So then I will use my...
My wife is asking a question here from New York. I hope the lecture went well. I have to tell her it's not over yet.
Yeah. That's important.
Now it's too long.
But we can see that your telephone is muted, so it's okay. Don't worry. So I will not chat with my wife and not with my girlfriend. I will ask and check your questions. Don't worry. Martin, the stage is yours now.
Thanks very much. So first of all, I would like to start by saying, Stephen, thank you very much for coming to Ostrava. It's amazing to have you here in person. And I'm very happy to be on the stage with Stephen, to be part of this presentation. And I will take the opportunity to walk you, everyone, through some of the latest design development in terms of technology and also in terms of how we renovate the existing building, which is an integral part of the project.
I just want to say that he worked for me for 3 years on a very complicated project, so I know he's like my eyes. Also, he was born in Ostrava, so that's important.
That's true. We have to start by addressing the daylight. The daylight is a unique feature of the hall, apart from the amazing acoustics that we have. The natural daylight enters the hall and also all the other public spaces. We have developed the detail that allows the natural light to get into the hall, but also using a smart blackout glass, we are able to completely shut it off. So then the Philharmonie has the opportunity to have a performances with natural light, which I don't know any other concert hall where you can do that. We've been very closely developing the original idea of the perfect acoustic instrument in its case. Structurally speaking, there's two systems. There is a concrete shell of the concert hall and the elevator cores and the stair cores that are surrounded by the case that is made entirely out of steel. And we have been optimizing this structure with the structural engineers, both in New York and in Prague. They were supposed to be here, but they are watching, I'm sure. And we were able to switch the system from an orthogonal system to a diagonal one. And by doing so, we saved something like 30% on the tonnage of the steel. Here you see the two systems combined together. So the perfect instrument here in concrete inside of the case made out of steel. In any concert hall, one of the greatest challenges is the vibrations. Vibrations, not only airborne noise from the outside, but also the vibrations that travel from, for example, a tram or a truck or a car through the ground to the concert hall. And we have developed a scheme where we isolating the foundation system by doing two slabs. And you can, in red, you can see the insulation that separates any noise that could travel through the ground to the concert hall. I have some slides to illustrate how difficult this design development stage is for everyone, for architects, but also for the consultants, for the experts, engineers. This is one of many models we have. This particular one shows the sprinkler heads in the concert hall. This one shows all the mechanical ductworks, heating, cooling, air conditioning. And you can see that not only they are in the new hall, but they are also in the existing building. Here is a detail of that ductwork system surrounding the new concert hall. This is how we get air inside the space. There is a detail of how that fresh air is delivered to the hall. It's a low velocity air, of course, for the acoustic reasons, and is distributed under the seats of the audience. Now, this big hall and the chamber hall and all the halls in this project need a source of cooling, and we have, with Matthias Schuler from Transolar, Stephen mentioned him earlier, we have developed this field of geothermal wells. They are 110 meters deep. There's 125 of them. They are surrounding the building, but there's also some under the new building. And with these wells, we're bringing either cold or heat from the ground. And this is the one and only source for the entire project. That is complemented by a field of PV panels on the roof of the existing building. These are monochromatic crystallic panels that deliver something like 120 megawatt hours annually. So that covers about 50% of the mechanical needs of the entire project, which is amazing.
I would just add that the geothermal system of heating and cooling means there will be no noise from air conditioning motors in these boxes. You know, when you go to a new building out in the back or up on the roof, there are all these big air conditioners with their... None of that. This is totally silent.
Everything is underground.
Right, and the heat is radiant in the slab, so it's totally silent. And I've done a number of geothermal cooling and heating installations, and my archive building in Rhinebeck is heated and cooled by a single well, 500 feet deep, that heats and cools 3,000 square feet perfectly. And so, anyway, and all these projects that we've done, it amazes me that everyone doesn't do this, you know? I mean, it's the future. There's no fossil fuels. There's no machines making noise. There's no burners or boilers or oil. Anyway, I'm really excited and happy that the people involved here will do this, because once you've done this, it's forever. There's no maintenance. You're taking the temperature of the water, 51 degrees, and you're turning it into heat when you need to, and you're turning it into cool when you need to. And it's no moving parts in that. Anyway, I'm very excited, because I thought maybe they had value engineered this out.
Well, we have made a calculation that it pays back in less than 10 years,
yes,
you know, the investment of
course.
this. So it would be silly not to do this, actually.
Right.
Okay, so since we are sitting in a theater, it's part of the existing building. I think one of the other unique features of the entire project is the relationship between the new building and the existing building. The existing building, indeed, designed by great architect Jaroslav Wagner in the 50s, then opened to public in 1961. Now it's a national heritage. It's a landmark, protected buildings. And apart from this theater hall, there is a number of other halls that are becoming part of this project. We chose one slide to demonstrate how this relationship between the two projects, between these two buildings, how this works in a very close relationship. Maybe I should show you in more detail. So what's really important is that we have connection between the old and the new building on multiple spots. And here in blue you see the connection for the public, so that the public can use all the great halls that are existing. They get to the chamber hall, but they also have access to the main concert hall, while the artists, the musicians or the performers, have their changing rooms in both the existing hall, but also on the perimeter of the concert hall, and both have access and are connected between the old and the new building with this bridge. There is one additional connection in the basement. That's a service connection. So I think another important feature of this entire project is kind of this symbiosis of the two, making one functional whole. Okay. Apart from these spaces that I just mentioned, we are also working on renovating all the other great spaces that are here in this existing building. I should just briefly mention the former movie theater of the demanding viewer, which was converted into something like fitness center or something like that. We are bringing this back. We're creating this education center for 200 seated with the changing room and with the new entrance. This is back to the original layout of Jaroslav Wagner. We are renovating the restaurant, and we are creating a new lecture hall. And on the upper levels, there's some few other important halls, rehearsal, music hall. There will be a new recording studio, so the Philharmonic can make recordings from the hall in the studio, mix them and publish them. There's also some offices and the theater where we're seated right now. So the last one to mention, and that's something that we've been focused on very much in this past few months, is the chamber hall. Chamber hall, you see the model here, will be located in the main hall just behind you, where that space is created by adding a new seating layout. It's a very flexible hall. We're working with Nagata Acoustics on this kind of I should say, a little sister of the concert hall that has great spatial and building acoustics, but also creating a new social spaces behind it. And one of the last features, and that's my last point, is you can see those two windows there. We are basically going back to Wagner's original idea where these halls were connected with the exterior, with the street. And so we are opening with these two windows, we are returning back to the original idea of Jaroslav Wagner.
Thank you, Martin. So I wanted to just show a little run-through about this exhibition, which is so beautifully installed in Ostrava, and where it was going and how it went around the world. And it started in New Paltz, New York. My wife, Dimitra, and Nina Strichter-Levine made this show, and I was very skeptical. I said, oh, okay, and I kind of stayed back from it. I said, let's just not put any buildings that are finished. It's about the process. Construction photos in black on cloth, and the sort of idea of watercolors and models and how the process goes. And then, to my surprise, a client from Korea said, we love this show. They went up to New York. They're a shipping company. So they built crates for the whole show. Now, once you have crates, you've got a traveling show. The crates are very expensive. So I went to Seoul, Korea, and we went to 2 places in Korea, and I was very proud of that. In fact, this is my client in Korea, the Daewang Shipping Company, Dr. Chung, wonderful client. This is his guest house and gallery, the Daewang. I think there's a little video here that's going to play. How do I get it to play? This was a kind of ideal client. And you can see this is in the Gangbuk area of Seoul, which is a sort of mountainous area, but there's all these different houses there, and there's the Samsung galleries are there. So this is a gallery and a house. That's a fountain at the entranceway. So you arrive at the center of the house, but you're not inside or you're not outside, you're in between. So the guest house is on the left and the house is on the right and the gallery is underneath. That's the gallery level, and that's all lit by natural light, which is moving through the water. So the natural light is actually, and that was the opening event. There I am sitting in the front row. And it's all, you know, I'm very interested in the detail of architecture. I think the way the material and the detail and all these elements work together is enormously important. And therefore, we don't do that many buildings, and we craft every building. So that's what we're doing here. So it's, you know, there's this sort of the level of every element that's going into work of architecture, I think, in the end is part of the experience. Light fixtures that are specially designed. There you see the context. That was actually the project was designed from a musical score from a man by the name of Anhalt, and the score I read as it had 55 elements, so I read it as 55 skylights. That's how many skylights are in the house, and it was never played. The score was never played because it required 200 musicians, and so we built a house, and the widow of Anhalt sent us an email, said, my boy, I was surprised to see my husband's score that had never been played turned into a piece of architecture. And then the show went to Nanjing, so it was 2 places in China, and this is a project, my first project in China actually, the Nanjing Museum. I think this is also a little video. When I first went to China, I was invited to do this little museum by Arata Izasaki. And I didn't realize it, but it took 12 years to build this. They built it by hand. It's a long story, but it's my first building, but then in the meanwhile, I was invited to do several other projects there in Beijing, the linked hybrid. But this is all done in bamboo formed concrete. That was my first project in bamboo formed concrete, and the courtyards are paved from huton brick. You know, at that time they were tearing down really wonderful small buildings in Nanjing to put up very ugly skyscrapers, and I want to recycle that brickwork, and that became the gardens. And the building was all based on parallel perspective, which comes from Chinese painting. So the experience of the space is really key. And as you move through the courtyards, then you arrive at the upper gallery and you have a view back to the city of Nanjing. It's called the Xifang Art Museum, and it's the first venue in China that we had the show. So I was very excited to go back to a building that had been opened 4 or 5 years before, and then be able to have an exhibition there. That's the final gallery that spins around at the top and glows at night and looks back at the city of Nanjing in the distance. Unfortunately, the air is so polluted you couldn't see the city in this particular video. On a clear day, you can see the city. And then, that was the show. The exhibit was there, and then it went to Shanghai. There you see it in a very important architect in Shanghai. The show was split up, and then we just realized, and this is on our website now. We just realized that the Culture and Health Center in Shanghai, it just opened. It's based on the philosopher Karl Popper's text called Clocks and Clouds. So you see this sort of clock-like shape in the landscape, and then the health building on the left and the cultural building on the right. And because of COVID, I have not been able to visit this, and tomorrow I'm going to go to, I don't have that in this lecture, I did 4 buildings that opened during the COVID period. All these openings occurred, so now I'm going to my second one tomorrow in Langenloy, the hotel in Langenloy. That was in Japan. A wonderful show at a place called the Architekt. And that was my first project in China, in Fukuoka, the void space, hinge space housing, which is still in great condition. The hinge space idea of movable walls and water gardens. And then it made it to the Bellevue Art Museum, my hometown, Seattle, well, Manchester really, across Puget Sound. So that was a building that I realized 20 years ago, and they received the show, but because of COVID, I couldn't go. And so we had a kind of a Zoom opening. And there it is in the top gallery, all natural light. And then it went to another building that we just finished, in Houston, the Museum of Fine Arts in Houston. There we were doing the competition. There it was against Tom Main and Snohetta, and the project was to build a new museum, the building on the right, but in order to free up the parking lot, you had to build a 7-story parking garage next to it on the left and behind an existing art building called the Glassell School of Art. And I proposed to them, you should not do that. You should not build a parking garage. Instead, you should tear down the existing Glassell School and build a new Glassell School twice the size and put all the parking in a layer underneath it. And that's what they did. You see the Noguchi did the sculpture garden there, and there's the Glassell School on the left and the new Kinder building on the right. And there's the finished project. It was done in 2 phases over a period of 12 years. And that's all in a cold jacket. It gets very hot in Houston. So the idea of the ecological idea is there are these glass tubes that when the sun hits the building, by the chimney effect, it raises the hot air and it escapes through the tops of the tubes. That's a central space, 3 levels of galleries. And all the idea of the kind of luminous canopy, so the sort of big Texas sky of clouds gives the feeling of the natural light in the galleries at the top floor. And again, I haven't been there. It opened, and because of COVID, I haven't been able to go. So I'm looking forward to see that. 12 years of work, and I haven't had a chance. There we are. Of course, I went many times on looking at the site, and I'm hoping we will also have full-scale mock-ups here. I think it's mocking up the pieces of a building at full scale on the site under the light of the place is very important. And when we proposed these glass tubes, this cold jacket, there was a lot of pushback. It was difficult to do this, but then when we mocked it up and we got the actual tubes, laminated glass, it was a big success. That's Olaf. And Olaf is here running the project with Martin and his team.
I was going to say that Olaf is already a familiar face in Ostrava. He's been here a couple of times.
Right. But Olaf is a Swiss-minded precisionist and a very cool man. You know, I get all excited. I say, what's going on? What are they doing? And Olaf says, we have it all under control. And so he's very important on my team. He's been working with me for almost 20 years now. I'm surprised that he doesn't have any gray hair, but he's very, very important here in Ostrava and will be very important on this, as he was in Houston on this project. We just finished this Houston project, and he has to come back to Ostrava. There you see the Glassell School on the left, the new museum in the foreground, and the city of Houston. And you can see that these models are in the exhibition at the House of Art. That's the main entrance of the Glassell School. That also works as an amphitheater. And there's the exhibition there. And now it came across the sea. The Museum of Houston sent it over here, but because of COVID, we couldn't open it in Ostrava. And then the Polish Architecture Museum said, we'll take it. I was surprised. So, wow, it got to be in Poland, in that great cathedral space. That was really interesting, you know. I was very excited about that. And then, of course, we have the Holl. So the Holl is getting known all around where this exhibition travels. And now it's here. So I'm very excited, and I think they've done a spectacular job I love this space, by the way, the natural light, and the way that they organize it with a blank wall in the back. Tadeus, I think, did a fantastic job and then when I saw the opening, I was shocked. What are these timpani drums doing out in front of it? What's going to happen? So I watched it live, you know, and it was spectacular. You know, this was, I wish I could have been there. That was really special. Sinfoniata, and Janacek was there. And everyone is so supportive. And today, you know, yesterday, I couldn't wait to go over there and see everything. And as I said, we have larger models, and there will be an even larger model of the acoustic model. I guess we'll have that somewhere where people can visit it.
We will eventually bring it to Ostrava, Stephen. The big model. The
yes,
acoustics.
yes. So people will be able. There's Tadeus and I. And that was Janacek. I feel a special attachment to Janacek. I played the trumpet in high school, and I believe we tried to play Taras Bulba, or a high school version of it. And I was always attracted to Janacek, and then when this whole event is a life-changing thing, I've been reading everything I can about it. You know, for me, the relation is that there's the work, and there's a creative work, and I think he was the first minimalist composer. You know, I studied Bela Bartok many years, as I think that there is a relationship between music and architecture. So the folk music that Bela Bartok gathered, but I didn't realize that Janacek did that before Bela Bartok. So now tomorrow we're going to go and see Janacek's grave, and we're seeing his memorial, and we're going to Brno. I think that's the last slide. So
Stephen, can I share with the audience that was your favorite part in Ostrava?
Yeah, that square. Well, we was
You
today
even
is
renamed it. You even
the
renamed
Smetana Square. It's not the Smetana Square, but anyway, I love that idea I love those two squares, the way they relate to one another. I think it's very, very powerful urban space. So now we're open for questions. I think that's the last slide. Is there another slide?
It is,
No,
yeah.
that's the last slide.
It is the last one.
So we're
Stephen,
open
Martin,
for questions.
thank you very much for the presentation. If you want, you can text your wife that the presentation is over and the questions are now going on. Well, I can't ask you a different question. When you mentioned playing trumpet at the high school, were you good? Sorry for
I have
this
to tell
person.
a story. Okay. So I played out of the side of my mouth, and Mr. Johnson, the band leader, said, I need you to play the sousaphone. First of all, this is wrong. You're playing out of the side of your mouth. So then they gave me the sousaphone. So I had a mouthpiece like this. By the way, I still have a tuba that I play for my children at home, And but what happened was my father, it was Kunst Junior High School, had a really nice auditorium. So Louis Armstrong was touring, and he came from Seattle to Bremerton, Washington, and my father says, let's go to the concert. Then I sat in the front row, and it was quite a nice auditorium, and I watched Louis Armstrong play out of the side of his mouth. And I went to Mr. Johnson, and I said, my God, you're criticizing me playing out of the side of my mouth, but Louis Armstrong plays out of the side of his mouth. And he said, yeah, but we need somebody to play the sousaphone, so we have to get it. So that was the end of my trumpet playing.
Okay, let's go to the questions from the audience, and like the first one, or maybe the most interesting for me, is connected to water. We have seen several pictures, several designs you've made, where the relationship between architecture and water is very strong. Usually it becomes one unique complex. Can you describe us why it's so important for you?
Well, your body is your body is 3/4 water. The earth is 3/4 water, I mean, the reality is it's an organic, phenomenological substance. And I grew up on Puget Sound, and we looked out at this gigantic body of Puget Sound, and you could see the moonrise over the water. You could see the sunrise from the east, and all the different seasons of the year. You would trace that in the reflection, and when it rained, you would get nodal lines. I remember as a child this sort of melancholic feeling of these nodal lines. And when I made my first project in China at Fukuoka, it was called Void Space, Hinge Space, but between the void spaces are water gardens. And I described the importance in living your life in these there were only 30 apartments, but the feeling of the atmosphere, of the change of day, and especially if it rains, you see these nodal lines in the water, and they totally understood it. So it's just something I grew up with, and I feel it's a fundamental landscape. It's a piece of landscape. By the way, I worked as a landscape architect for 4 years for Lawrence Halpern in San Francisco, at the time probably the most important landscape architect in America, and I did fountains. I did 4 fountains with him that I actually, he let me design. That's a longer story. But so for me, landscape needs to be thought of as integral to the architecture. And one of the things we're trying to do here is save these great trees that are not showing up in this drawing. I guess they're not showing up. Are these trees in the drawing? the great trees that we're talking about. Anyway,
I see one of them.
we're very conscious of the role of landscape and the importance, and water's part of landscape.
Stephen, also I wanted to share that the favorite part of the Nelson Atkins Museum in Kansas City is that reflecting pool with the skylights where the light gets through the thin layer of water and creates this amazing effect on the lower level that changes in time. It's quite beautiful.
Right.
We've invited a lot of students. Some of them came from Ostrava, of course, that's the hometown. Some of them came from Brno, from Prague. So thank you for being here. I guess that one of you asked the following questions. Can you give any advice for young architect?
Go and visit the architecture in person, because more than ever today, the internet is lying to you. It's really, I think it's not telling the truth. And I'm sorry that we're looking at a digital drawing when I'm saying this, because
This one is
you can't escape using these techniques, the modern technology. You can't escape, but the actual physical thing is something else. And when I studied in Rome, that changed my life. I lived behind the Pantheon. I went to the Pantheon every day to see the light coming in. I think architecture, it surrounds you. You can't. When you're looking at a screen, you're looking at a synthetic image that does not give you the real story of architecture. It's three-dimensional. It's about sound and smell and texture. So the most important thing you can do as a student is to travel and see the buildings yourself in the flesh. You go to Rome. I saw all the buildings of Oliver Alto. I think I saw all the buildings of Le Corbusier. For example, if you just go to the Kruller-Müller house in Prague and you go inside, you'd spend an hour in there. You get this ROM plan. The ROM plan of Adolf Loos, a plan of volumes. You cannot do a digital drawing of that. You have to experience it. It's like a piece of music, the ROM plan. Up, spaces interlocking up and down, and then the gorgeous use of the different stones and the materials there. So if you're a student of architecture in the Czech Republic, that's a requirement. You must see the Kruller-Müller house in the flesh. Don't look at it in pictures, because the pictures don't tell you the truth. And I think the other thing is, if you go to work, you should try to work in a smaller studio that's really trying to do the craft of architecture, because unfortunately it has become very corporate now. And in the corporate offices, it's really slave labor on Revit models. They're sitting in low ceilings, it's a kind of tragedy. We limited the size of our office to never be more than 33 people, because I don't think I had an office of 74 people at one time, and it was all about management. It was all about the payroll, and then you can't take the time to design because you're worried about the numbers. There's just too many people. Now the offices are like 250. Well, they're not really worried about design. They're worried about the overhead of the monthly number they have to crack. And if you go to work in those places, that's the kind of thinking you start to get. And that's why the culture of architecture today is in a kind of crisis, I think, because of the corporate nature of the atmosphere. So, yeah, two things: go and visit, and then try to work in a smaller studio, that's more dedicated to architecture. And also, do not be depressed to be in the School of Architecture, to think, everyone that studies music doesn't have to be a conductor. It's a great education. I really believe you learn about material, you learn about physics, you learn about mathematics, you learn about social space. So it's a great education for any field. Many people who graduate in architecture go out in graphic design or go out in video game design, whatever. But it's a good education. It is a good education.
Nothing against video game design.
Don't be like thinking that you have to change your major, because of something I just said here. Because I'm a teacher. I've taught my whole life, basically. And I teach now. My wife and I teach together, and we teach at Columbia University, and we teach a class called Architecture Apropos Art, the relation of art sculpture, painting, and music and architecture. Very important.
Stephen, I also think that the message from your exhibition in Ostrava is also the importance of model making for the students. When you mention the renderings that we see every day in Arc Daily and other networks, I mean the importance of making a model, studying the project in a model, not in a computer rendering.
Right.
It's essential in your office, as I experienced it, as one of the most critical things.
Right. Can we? Yeah. I don't want to look at that computer drawing when we're talking about model making.
That's better.
I also, one more thing, when Stephen was talking about the size of the office, I remember you say that the ideal size of an office is a number of football team players.
Right.
Should be a football team.
That was,
I don't know what the number is.
No, I did. I set the size of my office at 11, but then we won the Nelson Atkins Museum and I needed 11 people to work on that project. So then I said 22. But then we had this project in China, and so, you know, then it got bigger and bigger, and that got out of hand in around 10 years ago or 8 years ago, I had 75 people, and I said, this is not worth it. And then I said 22 doesn't quite work, but 33 is a good number. That's 3 football teams. 33 works also.
That's an American football team then.
Right. And we have actually established that as the limit. So what's really interesting about that is when there's only a couple seats, you know, people start squirming around because they know if they're not producing, you know, there's only 33 seats in this place. So, well, we have 10 of them are in the Beijing office, but, you know, you have to be in there and doing it and working on it. It's hard work. Architecture's, it's a dedication, you know, it's a hard work. So many drawings and models and studies to get it right.
Martin, I guess that one of the most important things you did as a young architect was to meet Stephen. So can you also give any advice?
Oh, I tried really hard. I went to Colombia to be in his studio, and that year he took a sabbatical. I didn't teach. He didn't show up, basically.
I was on sabbatical, yeah.
Yes, and I tried really hard. I sent portfolios to your office a couple of times, and then
you worked for a great architect. Tell that story with.
I worked for Alberto Campo Baeza in Madrid.
Fantastic architect.
And he was the reason why I went to Colombia in the first place. He convinced me after I thought I was done with studying, and I was a real architect. He told me you need to go to school. He wrote me a recommendation letter and sent me to Colombia.
Another great studio is Alvaro Siza. I was there a year ago giving a lecture at Oporto, his school, and I spent the afternoon with him, and I said, how many people? 9 people. And Siza, you know, he's doing these fantastic buildings. There's just 9
Alberto's
people.
is 4. They have 4 people,
right.
and him,
right.
5 people.
Right. Norman Foster has 1,500 people, and he just sold his firm to some investment company, and I went on the internet and said, why the hell would they do that? It says, in order to grow. I said, what? This is idiocy, isn't it? I mean, that's not about architecture at all. You know, anyway.
Maybe let's go back to the building, because there are also some questions related to that. One is interested if you have ever considered opening any stage or auditorium towards the park, because we saw pictures where the foyer and some lounge is open towards the greenery, but has it any day been on the table that a stage could be open towards the park?
I don't think so. I mean, you must speak with Jan Zemla about that. I mean, that's...
Maybe that's his question, I don't know, you know. It's anonymous.
I'm thinking out loud. We have seen, for example, Casa Musica in Porto is open towards the park or the public area, but it doesn't really work. I mean, we're very kind of happy that we have the natural daylight in the hall, but then there was never any thought about connecting it with the park.
Well, I mean, there could be a temporary stage actually set up on the pond. You know, there could be certainly outside events in the summertime, but the main hall is a vineyard plan. So when you say the stage, do you mean the entire orchestra?
Maybe not the entire orchestra, maybe some like smaller one.
Well, I mean, sure, on a small platform. everything is possible. I think we're opening out definitely to the park. The building really does open to the park for sure, but the stage itself,
Well, the nature of the vineyard plan is that you don't have an orientation in the hall. Everything is orchestrated around the stage, so it would be very awkward to open this somewhere.
You've mentioned that one of the most important parts of studying architecture is thinking and getting knowledge about material. Have you ever got to the situation when material possibilities limited your ideas? Like you had a dream, you had a goal to reach, but you couldn't find technology and material to do it, to find a solution?
No.
No. You're a lucky man.
How about that? It's getting late. It's like...
You're a lucky
it's
man.
6:14, and my answer to that is no. I've been able to solve every single time. No, but I didn't succeed. You know how many designs I've done for the ones that are built? One in 20. So if you visit my model archive in Rhinebeck, you're going to see for every building that was built, there's a model, but there are 20 other models of buildings that we didn't win that competition, or the client backed out, or something else happened, whatever. It's not an easy field that way, but everyone is idealistic, has an idea, has a model, has a concept drawing, has the joy. And I also feel that in architecture, to have meaning, it doesn't have to be built. A piece of music, like Arnholt's symphony of volumes that was never played, has a meaning now in a building in Korea. It doesn't have to be built. It doesn't have to be played. It doesn't have to be, a great sculptor can propose a sculptural work like Chiyida's incredible chapel cut into the mountain. Eduardo Chillida, towards the end of his life, proposed this amazing work where there's a mountain, and I can't remember the name of it. If Alberto was here, he would tell us the whole story. But, you see the drawings and the model of that project, and you feel the energy of it, and it wasn't realized. So that's why I have a model archive, because those are visions. Those are, I think it's important. A corporate firm, they don't even keep them. They don't build models, and they don't keep an archive, that's more of a business. So that's the point that I was trying to make to the students is please try to work for somehow the art of architecture, not the business, because the business is something else.
You describe visiting the buildings personally and getting to know them as one of the crucial activity for any architect. But could modern technologies like virtual reality, for example, be a substitution for that?
No.
No. Another question.
Absolutely.
The same answer.
No. I will emphatically say that, and that's the mistake that you cannot make if you want to really understand. You can't. For example, the Salk Institute in La Jolla by Louis Kahn. When you stand there and you see the Pacific Ocean, and the sun is reflecting on the water, and it reflects on that strip of water that Louis Barragan made in the plaza, and the two merge. You can't put that. You can't do that. You can't see that on the internet. You have to be there. And the acoustic, the sound, when you walk to the edge and you hear the water tumbling into the fountain and you see the ocean beyond and you smell the salt air coming off the Pacific Ocean and you see the sunlight on that teak wood that's weathered to a silver gray. And, it's like a spectacular place. And it's one of the great spaces on the whole Pacific coast. But you can't photograph it, really. You can try, but it doesn't really come out that way. It's got to be, all the senses are engaged when you're there. Smell, sound, texture, your feet, perspective, overlapping space. You can't, this is a screen. That's no substitute. And virtual reality, that's kind of a real sad story, with the glasses like this. Come on. It's silly. It's not really. It's okay. I have a client who's in Taiwan who loves it, and he has all the goggles, and So we built his building. That's a longer discussion. I don't think. no, I mean, that would be like go on virtual reality vacation and don't go to the beach and see the sun or, you know, I mean,
That's boring.
just stay in your basement with the blinds closed and do a virtual reality vacation. I mean, what are you going to miss? No, it's the same thing. Is it the same thing?
Everything. Well, next question is open, so I'm quite sure you can't say no as an answer, but it's a theoretical one. The beginning of your project of designing, is it based on creating mood, an atmosphere, or like using the specific spaces and volumes? So is it about the atmosphere inside, or about the spaces which like are around the people there?
Well, first of all, I believe that there needs to be an idea that drives the design. So, you know, every project, and I really didn't speak about that, but there's a concept, there's an idea, there's a theoretical basis. There's, you know, like in the Maggie Center in London, we had the idea of the shape notes of the music. And I'm sorry, I don't have that, but it's in the exhibition, right? The Maggie Center. And then there's the notion of a thing within a thing within a thing. There's a bamboo heart, and then there's a concrete, almost like a hand, and then there's the score, this musical score, inscribed in the sort of the staff that makes the outside case. So that's an idea that drives the design. But the real test is in the experience, is in the atmosphere that's created. Yes, the test, the experience. So, you know, you have an intellectual idea that's tying everything together, but the real test is the experience. That means a 5-year-old can be a judge, but there's an intellectual thing that's behind it. I think Janacek's work is like that. For me, that's why I relate so much to what he did as a composer. He had very kind of, you know, strict ideas that he was working with, and you know, I think it's just quite fascinating. You know, as does Arvo Part. You know, there's a real conceptual strategy behind his change and how he became such an important composer today. And I spent quite a bit of time with him. He's a friend of mine, and Jan Zemlec said that will be one of the first concerts that we'll play in the new hall.
He promised today, so
right.
We'll keep him accountable for that.
Stephen, last question for today's evening, because you have a busy program today and tomorrow as well. It's again related to the project, because we saw the entrance part, we saw a lot of escalators, but no stairs actually. So are there any to enter the building?
Of course, of course. And there'll be nice spaces, you know, there'll be pleasant spaces. I don't believe in kind of back room spaces. There'll be attention to detail and natural light. And what you saw, that one great stair in the...
There's a beautiful stair, the main stair with the natural light coming down, where you even were considering designing a beautiful chandelier suspended from the
No, there's the circulation, and there are plenty of stairs because there's a lot of exit requirements, fire requirements, and it's a big building. There's a lot of parts to it. I mean, you can't show it in a couple of
pictures.
Yeah.
There is a lot of stairs, a lot of egress stairs. They're very complicated. And the funny story is that we used computer drawings to demonstrate to the fire marshal that these stairs all work and they are safe. So that's one thing where we used the computer drawings, and they were actually very helpful.
Well, not always bad. Mr. Holl, Mr. Kopacz, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation and for your answers.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Stephen Holl.
Děkuji. Yeah.